And we are live after the spectacular Russian GP where lots of drama was had. But before we get into this incredible race, my favorite race of the season actually so far, what are you drinking, William?
Well, let's get an ad from our sponsors in here. I'm drinking Paulaner Oktoberfest. It's definitely not how you say it. But they always say one beer before work is fine, so I got a 1.5 liter beer. Just to celebrate Verstappen's triumph, Hamilton's 100th, everybody in the midfield basically dying. It's a good way to celebrate.
For sure. And I'm actually having my least favorite beer of all time, a Dos Equis.
The Beckett.
Dos Equis. Not my favorite beer, but it's pretty good, and I'm actually enjoying it this afternoon. So good to know we're loaded up on some drinks, and
Oh, yeah.
we're ready to talk about this race because, man, what a race.
What a race! What a spectacular race! Yeah, I ended up trying because I get off for those who don't know, I work night shifts. So I got off at 5 in the morning and tried to stay awake and watch the race. I got to lap 26 and I fell asleep. And when I woke up on my couch, the race was over, and I was like, "Well, fuck that." But the start was really good. So I
Yeah.
have a lot. I have a lot more about the start.
Okay, so I one big milestone that happened this week was Lewis Hamilton reaching 100 wins. So if you don't know already, Lewis Hamilton won the race uh, by a combination of luck, strategy, and skill. Um, Absolutely incredible how he did that. So congratulations to the GOAT, because he is the greatest of all time so far.
Yeah,
100 wins.
it's easy to hate this man, and he gets a lot of hate, but you know he's gonna go down in the record books in history. 100 wins, not 100 wins for the team, not 100 wins. You know, I don't even know how to explain it because there's like no other statistic that's close to it. He has 100 race wins of him in a car getting P1 on a fucking racetrack.
And there's a lot of drivers that actually never experience a race win or experience a podium. And this guy's just been up there just hanging out since he joined in 2007, actually.
Yeah, most drivers who get an F1 position do not win a race,
Yeah.
let
So
alone 10, let alone 50, let alone a
a
100.
hundred.
I mean, it's like unimaginable. Like they were talking about how all the top drivers who are racing have like 116 wins combined, and Lewis Hamilton just has 100 compared to everybody else. It's
And his closest competitor only has 17 so far. Max
yeah.
Verstappen only has 17.
No, that's a record that probably won't be broken for decades, if not longer.
I don't think so. I think all it takes is one team kind of planning correctly, like for next year's regulations.
Yeah.
There's going to be a new dominating team, or maybe it's going to be Mercedes with George Russell now. So who knows what the hell the future holds? Because Mercedes came out of the woodwork, and I think it was 2013 or 2014. Like they weren't contenders before then, and suddenly now they've won since then. There's been no other winner.
Oh man, I still can't believe it. I mean, I'm in like shock at how everything changed so fast. And rain was like before they even started the race, you could see the rain over the Black Sea, and they were like, "Well, that could come towards us at any time." And
Yeah,
it didn't happen until the absolute perfect moment. Like they
yeah,
were waiting for like, "Okay, let's change this." The FIA has a weather control machine that said, "We're gonna make this a little interesting."
yeah. They said we're gonna cause some climate change right above this track specifically on the
Yeah.
last 3 laps. So the race start. I know you talked about that. You watched that. What did you think of it? What were some notable items for you?
I liked it a lot. Ferrari and McLaren were neck and neck for a little bit. Ferrari got out in front, McLaren got out in front. What was interesting for me was Hamilton got stuck really hard for a while, especially turn two, I believe. I mean, he went from what, fourth to seventh just like that because he tried to undercut everybody and he just got boxed in by a mass of cars
Yeah.
and he had to
So
fight his way out of it.
yeah, no, that was absolutely nuts because Lando Norris didn't really get the best start. I think he was really looking out for Lewis Hamilton because he took off and Sainz was next to him, and he saw that because Lewis Hamilton had a great start. So this dude just flew past. He was going to fly into the lead, and then suddenly Lando Norris, who's a really great defender, just cuts in front of him, slows him down, and that's how he drops all the way back down to P. I think you said it was 7, right? P7, P6.
I believe it was 7.
Yeah, something like that. It was Lando's fault that he ended up so far back, but it was necessary because I think Lando knew if Lewis gets past us, it's done. It's a done deal. This dude's going to gain so much time on us. And so he was like, I'd rather attack Sainz than attack Lewis Hamilton. And so that was a tactical decision that he made early on that was really smart.
I don't think he was going after Hamilton with that. I think it was just it was a turn of events kind of deal where everybody's so close together in those first few laps, and when he overtook and really pushed in all the teams, like, those cars just combined into that turn. I'm surprised there really wasn't even any collisions besides the two Aston Martins.
Yeah, that was actually pretty surprising. I know towards the end when everyone was on slicks, there was a lot of spinning out, but no one was actually like hitting the walls or anything. They were just kind of spinning out of the track because everyone was driving very gingerly. Max Verstappen, he was insane. He started from the very back of the grid. And the craziest thing to me was that by lap 10, he was already in P12. So it took him 10 laps to get himself in a really good position. And I think that's why he ended up in the points in that podium today.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, it just goes like we were saying in the episode before. Mercedes and Red Bull just have crazy power and performance over the rest of the grid. And then, people say, oh, well, they're fast, but they're not that fast. He went from P20 to P2. Sure, the rain helped. I think if the rain didn't come in, he probably would have finished in the points still, maybe like 6 or 7.
Yeah, he was 7 before the rain situation happened.
Yeah, so the rain definitely pushed him to P2, but still, I mean, they drive so fast, and their cars are just so much better than everybody else's. It was surprising it took Hamilton that long to even catch Norris.
Yeah, he actually said post-interview, he was like, I don't think I would have caught up to him. If things would have stayed the same, I think we would have fought until the very last lap, to the very last turn. And he was like, I didn't really have the confidence that I was going to end up beating him in that position.
Well, he was 2 seconds behind him before the rain started?
Yeah, he was just about.
And that rain started on one side of the track, and
Norris
went off, and he just lost like a second and a half of time just like that.
Yeah, and he went off a few times, but he kept in front of Lewis Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just unfortunately did not work out for Lando.
Yeah, Lando Norris was racing like you on Project Cars.
Yeah, he did remind me of how I drive. He was just kind of, it felt like he was kind of a getaway driver those last 3 laps. He was just trying his best to get away and kind of look cool, kind of look like the baby driver.
I'm sure he was, just wrecked with nerves. Just like seeing the rain coming down the first time he got off the track, and after that I'm sure it shook him up. And man, would things have been different if he decided to pit.
Yeah, I think we definitely could have seen a different result. If not the win, he definitely could have at least been on the podium. And I think he would have been just as hurt as he was for the P7 that he got.
A good point to make is that this strategy for him could have worked out.
Yeah,
it could have stayed dry on one side of the track. He could have had the time to stay and keep up. It's a risk. He wanted to take that risk. It didn't pay off. So you can't really be mad at him being like, oh, that was a stupid idea. It was like, no, that's a strategy. It happens in other races where everybody pits for wets, and like the leader stays out, tries to get as much time as possible, and ends up winning the race, especially with 3 laps that they had left when everybody started pitting.
I think there's going to be a lot of debate whether it was his call or the team's call, because I know obviously the engineer was telling him, hey, do you want to come in for inters? And he's like, no, shut up.
Yeah, the team told him to pit. He made the decision.
But they also gave him very limited information, because they told him, we think it's going to stay like this till the end of the session. And that's when it was raining kind of lightly. So once it started pouring, and I think it was like literally right after he passed the pit stop, once he got into some of the later turns, it was very apparent that inters is the right call. And that's when he was like slipping and sliding, and he just, he ended up losing so many positions in that spot.
It's disappointing if you're a McLaren fan. I always love seeing McLaren do good. And constructors wise, they did fine. What are they at now in the rankings?
in the rankings,
For
constructors wise, they're
constructors, yeah,
third
they passed
with a
Ferrari.
nice little lead, but
Yeah,
not really. And it's one race difference most likely. But I mean, this could have been their second win in a row. Imagine if back to back wins. That would be insane.
that would be unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else who was extremely consistent. Speaking of McLaren, right? Riccardo. I think there's no doubt about it. He's back. He held a really good race. He wasn't really in that position that Lando was in, so I don't think he was really in the position for a podium finish. But he was driving super solid, and he had a really good race.
Yeah, he stayed as the number two for this race. He, listened to his team. He pitted when he was supposed to. He said, which is what teams should do is whoever's leading, if they want to have a strategy, you do the others. You do the opposite just to see how it works out.
Yeah, you have one and one kind of
Yeah.
slingshot around,
And
shake
I
and
mean,
bake.
shake and bake, yeah. And Ricardo, ended up being the one who got baked. Unfortunately, Norris shook himself right on out of a top three finish.
Yeah, but Ricardo, I think he's back. There's no question about it. I think he's really comfortable in that McLaren now. And the conditions and the craziness that happened with this race, he held up really well. He had a really great start as well. He's actually one of the reasons that he charged in the front. Like, he had an excellent start. He was hungry for win number 2 or podium at least, So it was absolutely incredible. Big Ricciardo fan, so absolutely excited to see him do well. End up in P4. He was there. If one of the top 3 people would have wiped out, like Lewis Hamilton or Lando would have wiped out, he was there to recover that.
I think Hamilton was too far,
But
near
but
the end at least.
but I mean if they would have crashed,
Yeah.
if they would have slipped, because like Lando had a really close call, and so if he would have crashed, we would have had Ricciardo there to pick up the pieces.
Very true. Hey, astute observation from the professionals over here. Back to my sponsor, Oktoberfest beer. Drink it before you go to work.
Drink it before you go to work, and it's honestly a really good beer. We had it at the Oktoberfest, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really
watched
enjoyed
this
it.
boy get absolutely hammered on German beer.
Yeah, it's funny when you sent me that picture where I'm like saluting the camera and just standing up like a soldier. So, shout out to our sponsor, unofficial sponsor.
The unofficial, Heineken Double Zero. We don't drink that pussy shit. I need at least 5%.
At least 5%. If I'm not drinking 5%, I'm drinking water.
Yeah. To be fair, I've had Heineken Double Zero because when I was working for a liquor store, they came in for a promotion.
No way.
And it's not bad. Like, it's for a non-alcoholic beer. I wouldn't buy it, but it was like, I could see if I'm a recovering alcoholic or I just have to drink and drive. Like, you might as well just have a Double Zero.
Engine penalties. There was a lot of people that took engine penalties this week. Bottas, Leclerc, Latifi, and Verstappen all took engine penalties. And I thought it was weird because, I watched the race after it had streamed, so I watched it later on in the day. And it was really interesting. I was looking at, I'm a big Perez fan, and I was like, why is he P8? Isn't Bottas P8? Up ahead, he ended up in P9. And then that's when I found out, Bottas took an engine penalty as well.
Yeah, and they were saying, because I was watching the live feed before the race, all the announcers are like, well, did Bottas do it as a strategy to hold him back? And Bottas, I don't know, I figured it was like lap 3 or lap 4 where Verstappen overtook him, and the announcer's like, Bottas didn't even defend. It's like, he's P18.
Yeah.
He's not going to defend that hard.
Yeah.
It was silly. It was a fun race to watch. But the announcers sometimes get on my nerves.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's sometimes where they're just like too focused. But I think this was a hard race to commentate because there was so much happening in the back with Verstappen charging through. There's a lot of battles back there. The midfield was absolutely insane. And then obviously the top couple of people as well were just all over the place. And they focused on the top, unfortunately, but when there was a lot of action going on in the back.
It's definitely a replay race where you watch people's cockpit views to really see what happened during those crucial turns.
Yeah, and I actually want to do a video on Perez and kind of why he ended up in that situation. And I actually uncovered some things that weren't covered in the race highlights or were even commented on. So I'm going to be excited to kind of release something on that. I'm going to wait for a few more articles to come out and kind of make sure that I'm saying the right things. You're right. There was a lot of things that happened that we didn't even get to see.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy watching just the numbers switch for Verstappen, turn one, turn two, turn
Yeah,
three, and he's just like
he's going
beating
off.
these dudes. I mean, obviously it was, it was Haas and Williams and Yuki Tsunoda and Antonio Giovinazzi, and they're just so slow. They're just so slow. So it's no surprise, even on hard tires, that Verstappen's going to get around them. But to do it so quickly, to get off the line and just say, all right, I'll see y'all next race.
Top
Yeah, my man,
three. Oh,
my man Verstappen started in the Dutch Grand Prix and ended P2 in this one. Started a country over and still finished.
no, that's pretty nuts that he was able to accomplish that. Top three losers of the race. Is there anyone that you have in mind? Any teams that you have in mind?
For sure, Williams. I mean, not just Williams, but
This
extremely
guy's
disappointing to
always
see them.
talking about Williams,
He
man.
started P3 and he was doing really well to
He
start. I
was. He
mean,
held it up really
like
nicely.
what happens? Where does all his pace just go to? After the first pit and he's like in 11th, a little behind points, and it's just like he just doesn't do anything. Maybe he loses his DRS zone. I don't know, but it's so sad to watch him.
Okay,
'Cause
I
everybody's
see
so
what happened to
hyped.
him. I see
Everybody's
what
so
happened to him.
hyped.
When he pitted, he was supposed to kind of be maybe somewhere in between Stroll and Sainz,
Hmm.
and he ended up behind both of them and actually next to Ocon too. So he I don't know if he had a bad pit stop or maybe he didn't have the best in lap out lap, but that's what happened. That's why he dropped so hard because he wasn't able to recover that anymore. He lost that to Sainz and Stroll.
You're saying he just got stuck in the midfield.
Yep, that's exactly what happened to him.
Still
This
disappointing.
this track was surprisingly hard to overtake unless it was coming off of the straights.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just looking at the layout, all those really tight turns. It's a street track. I'm using air quotes because I don't know if there's a true street track anymore.
A lot of medium speed corners for sure.
Yeah, medium speed corners. Walls are really close. A lot of people who just don't want to destroy their race trying to get over one person. Verstappen almost did. He got squeezed really close to the wall.
Anybody else that you think for losers, notable
Biggest
losers?
losers besides, yeah, I'm disappointed in Aston Martin. I really wanted Aston Martin to finish a little better. Same with Yuki Tsunoda, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yes.
Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, it's just like you want to see them do good, and it hurts to watch them just be so fucking average on this grid.
Yeah. Yeah, this was definitely a very average race for both of them. Actually,
And
pretty
so,
bad race.
going back to the Lance Stroll and Vettel knocking into each other, just such a lack of communication between the two teammates to hit each other at the end of the race. It's
Luck-
just like, come on, man.
Luckily, nothing happened. Imagine if they would have taken each other out or something like that. That would have
Yeah,
been
if they
absolutely
both
insane.
just bounced off the wall and spun, it'd be so sad.
And I think it was Stroll that ended up closing the gap on a Vettel. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he
it
just
was.
leisurely came into him, didn't even snap or anything, just like whoop, oh, there you
Oh,
are.
didn't know you were there. For me, another loser of this was Norris. Obviously, right? I think he had a bad call on the tire change. I think he took that gamble. We already talked about that a little bit, but he took that gamble and unfortunately it just didn't pay out for him. So I think, obviously that cost him the win and even a large chunk of points because he ended up in P7, I think. So he ended up just losing a lot of points there for McLaren, which, could prove vital come the end of the season with Ferrari. Actually he cut through the pit lane. He slid off and then cut back in.
Yeah, which is a penalty.
Which is a penalty, but they didn't give it to him. And I think the reason they didn't give it to him is the stewards gave a little bit of lenience because of the rain.
I have no idea, man. If trying to think of why the FIA gives and doesn't give penalties gives me a headache, so
Yeah.
I just tend to avoid it and say whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. So, because if he would have gotten that penalty, Raikkonen and Perez would have finished ahead of him. A 5-second penalty easily would have put them ahead of him.
Yeah, and shout out to Kimmy for having a really good race too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Kimmy, back in the points. He made an Instagram post today. He never posts on Instagram about racing. At least, like he'll always post about his really nice house and when he's on vacation with his family, but he'll never post about a race weekend. So
Yeah.
he was like, he said his post caption was literally points today, and it was just a bunch of pictures of the race. It was pretty funny.
That's the definition of an old man on Instagram.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Um,
happy for him though, especially this being his last year. It's nice to see him do good. It's nice to not hear him complain on the radio finishing P17. It's like, well, the car sucked today, which
yeah.
it's not my fault. The car sucks.
Yeah, another big loser for me, I think, was Perez. Obviously, right? He started in P8. He had a really good run. He was behind Lewis. He was giving Lewis so much pressure throughout a good chunk of the race. Lewis ended up kind of closing or opening a gap between them.
Hmm.
But, he battled for third with Leclerc and Alonso, which one is a future world champion, and then the other one is a double time, world champion. So Perez was fighting them for third, fourth the entire time, and it kept such an interesting race to kind of see that little battle going on. And unfortunately, I think that's why Perez made that bad call where he was like, no, I need to stay out as much as I can, right? Because I'm battling these guys. We're all three within 1 second of each other, and he just made that bad call of going in. But I mean, maybe this goes back to the team saying, hey, there's going to be more rain. You need to pit for inters. You're going to be completely gone towards the end of the race if you don't come in. And they weren't super crucial on that with him.
Did Perez pit late?
Yeah, he pitted late for the inters.
Yeah.
So with him, it was a really interesting thing. It was kind of a double whammy. So he ended up the first pit that he ran a really long stint on the hards, and when he pitted to change to the mediums, they had a 9 second pit stop. So they completely undid everything that he had worked really hard to do
Hmm.
with a really crap stop. And still from there, he was able to climb back up and fight for P3. And towards the end of the race, just before the rain came, he was in P3. He had just broken away from Alonso. So he was in a really good spot. The rain came. He stayed out. Didn't work out. He was slipping and sliding. He actually went off the track, I think, 2 or 3 times. Crashed in the pit lane and got his inters. And by the time he came out, he was P9. So it was just an all around, like, things went from 100 to 0 really fast for Perez and Red Bull there.
Hmm. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I mean, it's team-wise, they both got points, double points. Verstappen, obviously, still a huge contender
Yeah.
for the title
Yeah, no,
championship.
that was super important that Verstappen. And what I was talking about with Nancy was really just, honestly, I preferred the swap because Verstappen was in P7, so that's where he would have ended, and Hamilton would have gotten first or second. Unfortunately, things worked out the way they did, but I'm happy Verstappen was still able to capitalize and end in P2 because that's going to be super crucial. They're for the F1 standings for the Drivers' Championship. It's 246.5 versus 244.5.
Yeah, so it's gonna come down to one race, literally. Hopefully, I mean, what if it comes down to the last
Oh,
race?
if it comes down to the last race, that's going to be
What is
so
that, Abu
fun.
Dhabi?
Abu Dhabi. And
Yeah.
don't forget, we're going to the U.S. Grand Prix not too long from now.
I know it's gonna be so fun. We're gonna try and get some live content for
Mm-hmm.
y'all. Maybe do
Mm-hmm.
some interviews. Maybe we might get too drunk before the race and just fall asleep.
Yeah.
We're gonna watch the Formula Women's too. Maybe we'll see a crash. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, it'll be a really fun weekend. But yeah, I think that's a good kind of note to kind of end the video on. There was a lot of stuff that happened. Alonso doing a really great recovery drive, staying very consistent, and Mercedes really just played the strategy right because actually I don't know if you knew this, but when the rain came in, Bottas was out of the points and he ended up in P5 because they both pitted for inters pretty fast. So Mercedes had the inside knowledge on the rain that was coming.
All that, all that racing, just for a Hamver finish.
Yeah. That's the funniest thing too, because I think about that and I'm like, this was such an exciting race from the entire time, and it wasn't until the end that they came into, Hamilton taking the win and then Verstappen just coming out of nowhere and ending up on P2.
I'm still not a huge fan of the track. The weather is what made this really interesting. The starting grid is what made me want to watch it.
Hmm.
And The rain at the ends, man. I mean, it summed up like how random these races can truly be. How for, half a decade that there was so much dominance that it was like boring to watch. People just would love, hate to see Mercedes just keep doing good over and over again. And now it's like there's a title contender. The past races have been nuts in terms of who has a good Saturday, who's getting good qualifying.
Yeah.
And even though it still ends up with Hamilton winning, it's like at least you got some entertainment with
We
that.
got a lot of entertainment throughout the
Yeah.
entire time. It was for me. It was a really engaging 2 hours. My favorite Grand Prix so far, just because of what all happened. Not the happiest with the results, but it was still the most engaging race. Lots of drama, and then of course that rain coming in on the last 3-4 laps of the race, that really just spiced things up.
I will say the Dutch GP is still my favorite.
Okay, yeah, that one's a good feel good one, but
Yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and so I'm glad the Russian people got a really good spectacle over there.
Yeah, they got to see Mazepin. Did he finish? Did Mazepin finish a race? Because we gotta know. I don't think he did.
No, he didn't. He didn't
He didn't
finish.
even finish the Russia GP. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, poor Mazepin. Hopefully, Haas has a better car. Because I would like to see some new people kind of battling in the midfield. I think Mick Schumacher has a lot of potential. So
Oh, I didn't show you this news article. So next year, Haas, they're changing their colors to blue. So that way, when everybody passes them, they know what team it is. It's just a blue flag team.
poor Haas. Always the butt end of the jokes, huh?
Yeah, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Well, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I know we really enjoyed the race, and hopefully we can continue to bring y'all some more content.